Welcome back to the channel. Today is June 6, 2026, and today I want to go over Zcash. Now, Zcash is kind of interesting because it's a coin that is not following Bitcoin in the sense that it seems to have its own schedule aside from Bitcoin. Let's go back to October 10th, 2025. In October 10th, 2025, Bitcoin hit $125,000 and there was a huge crash on the 10th of October. After that crash, Zcash was already in the midst of a bull run. Its actual bull run started right here earlier in July of 2024, but it exploded while the rest of the crypto market started its slow descent down. In the month of October 2025, Zcash went from about $72 to $406 in 1 month, which is very explosive and volatile, uh, but pretty amazing. And then in the next month, in November 2025, around I believe it was 700, and I'm just going to let me just remove this trend line here. It looks like it made a high of $742 around November 2025, and that move was just really explosive. So Zcash had to take a break, and it started a correction, which is healthy. This is normal in any market, stocks, cryptos, forex, whatever. It started a healthy correction, and it made another low, kind of like it did here. It moved up here, kind of lulled a little bit. I call this is called pauses. So it goes up, has a pause, goes up, has a pause, and it was going back up to this area close to 740 30 for $34 to try to break this upside, this essentially this high that it had. And when you reach a high on the stock, it can be resistance. How strong it is really depends on the stock and the circumstances and how long it takes to get there, but it was on its way to try to break this high here. Now, I'm going to throw on some moving averages, so I'm going to throw on the 8 moving average, the 20, the 50, and the 200. So the white is 8, the green is 20, and I don't know why I put on the EMA, sorry, that was a mistake. And this is the 50. And I'll go ahead and I meant to put the 200 on, and the 200 doesn't show up on the monthly chart, but we'll watch it here in a second. Now, as you can tell, when Zcash got really, really explosive, and this was the peak where it had its all-time high, I want you to notice how far it was away from the 20 period moving average. This particular moving average represents 20 months. But look at how far it is. When This is just something to put in your back pocket. Whenever you see price get really, really far from the 20 moving average, which is the most important of the short term moving averages, that is typically a sign that it is going to retrace at any moment. It doesn't like to get this far from the 20 moving average for such a long period of time. And therefore, through the months of December and February, it retraced. And it didn't come back and touch this 20 moving average, but it got a little closer. You'll notice that it did drop below the 8, but not significantly. You can think of moving averages not like just this little bitty line, it's more like a zone. And even though I would say it broke out of that zone, it it did not go very far from out of that zone, and therefore started its way back up. Now, Looking at this from the weekly perspective, and we're looking at these moving averages from a weekly perspective here, you'll notice that when the really big explosive move came up, try to see how far these moving averages were spread apart. 200 is a very important moving average. We're going to consider this. There's an argument about whether the 200 is considered like a baseline for like a sine wave, and or whether it's the VWAP. But as you can tell with these moving averages, the 200 is really far away, the 50 is spread out, the 20 is spread out, and the 8 is spread out. When the retracement happened, what also happened is the 8 crossed below the 20 moving average, and this made the moving averages more compressed. As you can see, they're now closer together, like the 20. See how far when the price was really explosive. This is back here. The 20 was getting very separated from this 50. Since that cross of the 8, which is a bearish signal by the way, whenever you see the 8 cross the 20, that's a bad sign that there is possibility of long-term bearish or correction. Normally, if you're a swing trader or momentum trader, as soon as price drops below the 9, or actually, sorry, this is the 8. As soon as the price drops below the 8, typically after the first candle close, a swing trader or a momentum trader a lot of times just gets out of the stock, and they wait until the first close, which would be about right here, for the first close above the 8 for them to get back in. In this case, a swing trader or momentum trader would be out here because we had the first bar. This bar has not closed. However, they typically do this on the daily, which we'll go take a look at here in a second. There are some traders that do this on the weekly. My point is the 8 got below the 20, which is a bearish sign. It breaks a momentum of the stock. It did swing back up and go over the 10, but now the moving averages are more compressed. This also is a sign. It can be healthy and it can be a detriment. If the moving averages continue to compress over time, that's a sign of a change in direction of the stock. And normally, so that's going to mean that it's going to start going down. Now, in essentially this month of June, around this area, I do not know what day it broke. There was some bad news that broke, and this drove Zcash to essentially have a very bad day. And I don't think that news is that news obviously affected the price. There's no doubt about it. However, I think that Zcash was already in trouble and was going to have issues trying to get above this upper trend line. If we take a look at a different chart, and this is a weekly chart, well, before we do that, I do want to show you one. Yeah, we'll go ahead and go switch over here. We are on the weekly chart here, and I have the parabolic RSI, which measures overbought, oversold. I have the stochastic RSI, which represents momentum. I have the money flow index, which is price compared with volume, and it also measures overbought, oversold. And then I have the MACD, which is the measurement of the trend lines, and as you can see, it was already before the incident was already on its way to cross down, and it's a slower indicator. Therefore, there were signs that Zcash was already struggling and may have trouble getting up above this upward resistance. Now, let's go take a look at the daily chart. And this is what I found very interesting. This was Zcash's first attempt to kind of get up here. But notice what was going on. You see how this RSI is going down. And again, the news hit about, let's see here, hit about here. And that's when you saw the real big collapse in the RSI. However, if you take a look here, it came up, made a new high, had a little bit of a dip, came up again, made a little dip, went up here, and you see this first tip when it first came to it. This is what we call bearish divergence. The RSI is going down while the price continues to grind up on the chart. Bearish divergence is very powerful. It, however, can take some time to set up. In a stock market, it's not uncommon for a stock to have bearish divergence for months and even years. However, in crypto, what we've seen is that when bearish divergence shows up, it's more on the month side versus the yearly side, at least so far. Bitcoin has ran into this at least, I believe, 3 times. This last bull cycle, it had bearish divergence between the RSI and the price. So it is a very common. It's very common. It's not super common. However, when it occurs, you have to take it seriously. It is a sign that the show is probably close to being over. Once you see it, it's not that you immediately exit the asset. However, it puts you on alert that you got to pay very close attention to it because its momentum and its price probably could reverse very quickly when it happens. And that's one of the reasons why Bitcoin can drop so quickly is because of this bearish divergence that's occurring. It's happened here in Zcash. You can also see this on the stochastic RSI. This measures momentum. Even though at this first tip it had a lot of momentum, it was at almost 100%. Notice that we had the fast line cross the slow line. Now it happened up top here. However, as soon as it happens, it usually is a bad sign. When it crosses below the 80, it's confirmed. And therefore it had crossed below the 80 well before it had another swing up here. That's another sign of bearish divergence between the stochastic RSI and the price. The same thing with the money flow index. As you can tell, it at this first attempt, it was at its high, and then the price still seems to go up. Even though you can see the dip in the price, notice that this high was a lot. Even though it made a higher high, this money flow index is lower, and therefore and when it did it here and it made its little high there, look where the money flow peak was. It was down there. This was another sign of bearish divergence on the daily chart. So what's the point of this? The point is that while bad news can affect the price of an asset, it doesn't mean that that's the whole reason why the asset went down. This particular asset was already showing signs that it probably wasn't going to make a new high, that this was a double top situation, which means that the price goes pretty close to where it made its all-time high and then starts its bear market or descent down. If we go back to the weekly chart here, and let me throw this on, and I'm going to throw a trend line on, you can see that there is a possible trend line here. We've got 1, 2, 3 touches, and If you look at it, this weekly candle is not confirmed. However, if you look at it from a lower time frame, like a 2-day chart, you can see that this candle's already confirmed here and it has bounced off this trend line. For now, we're going to assume it is possibly something to be respected. So what this means, if you are a Zcash holder and you are believing that it's going to have a new all-time high, I want you to consider this. These are some very important things that have to happen on the chart to confirm your thesis that it is going or has a chance to go higher. So, point one, this trend line here, when it hits it, that means when the price comes back down here, does Zcash respect this? If Zcash comes here, let me bring up my drawing tool. If Zcash, say, comes like this, hits this trend line and then starts going up, from this point, you need Zcash to create a higher high. It doesn't necessarily have to break the all-time high, but it has to get higher than this particular high. If Zcash, say, stops right about here, that would be a lower high and a very bad sign that it would be kind of like this situation where it's going to go into a longer retracement. So if it makes a little high here and then comes back down, instead of going all the way up to the top, will this trend or hold as support and resistance? Normally on horizontal trend lines, while they can be very powerful and be good support and resistance, they're typically not as powerful as horizontal trend lines. We'll just have to see. I can't predict what's going to happen. However, I will say this, the steam in Zcash seems to be going out. I do expect it to get a little bit lower. I do expect this trend line to be broken. However, if you are an investor in Zcash, this is what you want to look for is, does the price respect this trend line? The next level of support is going to probably be around $191. If Zcash drops down here, the next question is, does Zcash respect this support? You may see it bounce like this, kind of go sideways for a little bit. However, if it doesn't start getting to a formation where it's starting to make higher highs and higher lows, that means there's going to be more downside. So the question really becomes, does that mean that you get out of the market at that point? Personally, from my perspective, I think Zcash has already made its high, and we're in the start of Zcash's bear market, which is fine. It's normal. It's opposite of Bitcoin. It's already shown that it's not exactly on the same schedule as Bitcoin. That wouldn't be the worst thing. However, it could very well come down here and bounce back up, and as you can see, you have a candle here. This could be turned into a green candle, and it could start its way up. So this might just be another, essentially, even though it's a lower low, it doesn't mean that it has to stay. It doesn't mean that it can't still go back up here and go. So it really just depends on your belief. But based on what I'm seeing when you're looking at the relative strength index and the signs of overbought and oversold, I excuse me, I don't think that Zcash this cycle has a lot of steam left. My best guess is that it's probably going to continue to go downward. Take that with what you will. That's just what I'm seeing. You remember to also look at your moving averages. As you can tell here on the 2-day, the 8 is about to cross the green again. If the 8 crosses the 50, that's a very bearish sign. If the 20 crosses the 50 and stays going lower than the 50 and angling down, that's a very sure sign that price is going to start going down the opposite direction. What'll happen is you will see the best way. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Let me. As you can see, when price is going down, you get into a formation where the 8 is below the 20, and then the 20 is below the 50. That's not the direction and the way that you want to be. And keep in mind, this is on the 2-day chart. It's going to take a lot longer for that formation to appear on a weekly chart. Just keep that in mind that those are signs that you're looking for. Right now, what is bearish is that you've had on the 2-day chart, which is the chart we're on right now, you have had a confirmed close deep below the 8. And if you have a candle forming here, and it's not an explosive candle trying to rush up to get back to this point before it had bad news. If the price doesn't even get halfway up this bar, that's very bearish. And it's just more signs that Zcash is starting to go down. So just keep that in mind if you're in Zcash. Now might be, if you haven't already taken profits after this bearish downturn, you may want to consider it. Just keep in mind, if you want to take a chance and go further, just keep all these factors in mind. It can kind of guide you in the future what you can see. Well, I hope this all helps. You have a great morning, and may God bless your day.